Hey guys, this is Matt once again, and welcome back to another review for the John Candy Marathon. And this time we have Brewster's Millions. And I'm like, should I shave? Should I save this for a Richard Pryor marathon? I'm like, no, because John Candy's in it. And if I ever do a Richard Pryor marathon, I could always talk about it again. But Brewster's Millions, directed by Walter Hill, which is not the normal kind of film he would do, and even he said in an interview that he mainly did this for the paycheck and to maybe get a movie that's successful that would then help him out later with other movies. He's usually a guy who deals with westerns or deals with a movie that's kind of like a modern day western or action films, or maybe they're action with some humor in it. While this is strictly a comedy and it's not something he would normally do. But he mentioned he liked working with Richard Pryor. He also said, though, that Richard was a guy who did not think he was funny unless he took drugs, but then he thought if he took drugs he would die. So he thought that was kind of sad for Richard, but he did apparently like working with him. And I believe this is a remake from a, yeah, version of the classic big money comedy first filmed in 1914. Adapted from the George Barr McCutcheon's novel by the writers of Trading Places. Produced by Lawrence Gordon and Joel Fatfuck Silver. Not only do you have Richard Pryor and John Candy, you have pedophile Stephen Collins, you have Hume Cronin, who was in films like Cocoon and Batteries Not Included. And I always enjoyed the idea behind this film, where Richard Pryor is a pitcher for a minor league baseball team. He's the pitcher, John Candy is the catcher, they're friends. One day, Richard Pryor finds out he's the sole heir to this rich guy who recently died, played by Hume Cronin, who has a film on a projector that tells Richard Pryor, well, you can either take this $1,000,000 or here's $30 million. But the thing is, you have to spend the $30 million in 30 days. And if you do that, you'll get $300 million. Now the thing is, with spending this $30 million, you can't have any assets. That means you can't buy stuff that you then own. You can't buy a TV, movies, books, whatever, and you own it. By the end of the month, all you can own is the shirt on your back. Also, you can't tell anyone, so you can't tell John Candy. You can't tell this woman that becomes his accountant and he falls in love with. Can't tell anybody. And there's other little stipulations, like you can't buy something and then burn it, destroy it. He can't just give the money away. He can give like a little bit for gambling, a little bit for charity. But yeah, if he spends $30 million in a month, he'll get $300 million. And that's such a cool premise. I really enjoy that premise. It's that Richard Pryor and John Candy is why I like the film and why I'm entertained by the film. I will say that watching it again, it's not the funniest Richard Pryor or John Candy film. I wouldn't say it's one of my favorites from them. Like John Candy, I would put Summer Rental, Uncle Buck, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, The Great Outdoors above this. Richard Pryor, my favorite is See No Evil, Hear No Evil. I would put that above this. I would put Bustin' Loose above this. I would put Stir Crazy above this. But this is still a fun movie. It did decent when it came out. It cost around 20 million, made a little over 40 million. So it did not do too badly. It's not too much laugh out loud funny, but the premise and these two guys make it somewhat entertaining. I feel like maybe they could have gone more crazy with what Richard. It's kind of like all the stipulations on Richard Pryor being able to spend this money took a little bit of the fun out of it because he couldn't do too many crazy things. He couldn't buy too many crazy things because he can't own anything. And to be honest, in real life, you could spend $30 million in a month easily. Because I'm like, okay, you're renting a hotel. Why don't you just rent a hotel, have 60 people, and pay them $500,000 a month? Or you get 30 people and you pay them $1 million a month. Because he does hire people. I'll pay you $5,000 a week. I'll pay you $500,000 a week. He's doing all this. Why doesn't he just get 30 people and be like, okay, all three of you, I'm going to pay you $1 million a month? Including his buddy John. He even gives his friend John Candy a job. He's like, I'll go pay you $100,000 a month. I'm like, why doesn't he just get 30 people, the security that he hires, this guy, the photograph him? You'll get paid $1 million a month. All 30 of you people. Boom, 30 million gone. Or if there's a limit, you can always be like, well, you can only pay someone, because he pays someone $500,000. I forget who it was, but he's like, okay, fine, 60 people, $500,000, and they have to do something. You clean the hotel. You guys clean each floor. You clean the dishes. You vacuum. You wash the windows. But of course, if you did that, there'd be no movie, and it would be a fun movie. But it's just one of those things I kept at the back. I'm like, you could spend $30 million, and it's not that hard. I mean, like there's one more where he buys a stamp for 1.25 million, but he uses it for its purpose, to send a postcard. So it's not an asset that he kept, but it's also not something he destroyed because he used it for its own, what it was intended for. So I'm like, well, why didn't he buy, you could buy 20 of those postcards. You know, I'm going to send one to my mom. I'm going to send one to my dad. I'm going to send one to, you know, to the next town. So, I mean, there are ways to do it, but again, you just either go with it or you don't. But John Candy is fun. I kind of wish he was given a bit more to do. Like, for example, if you look at See No Evil, Hear No Evil, and you see how much screen time Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor have in that movie together, I wish that was the case with this, with John Candy and Richard Pryor. One thing that bugged me was I hated that John Candy could not be told about what's going on. I think the film would have been much more fun if John Candy knew what was going on, but he had to consistently keep his trap shut. But he's like, oh, we could do this, do that, but he can't say anything, otherwise he'd ruin it, and ruin it for his buddy. Because my biggest thing that bugged me was the ending of the film, because a lot of people think Richard Pryor's going crazy. It's like, why are you spending all this money in 1 month? Well, he can't tell him. It's like, well, because if I do this, I get 300 million. He can't tell him that. So at the end, he's with the accountant and he wins. But there's never that moment where he tells John Candy what's going on. There's never that moment that he's able to tell John Candy, I know you think I'm crazy, but look, I got 300 million now because of this. And just what John Candy's reaction would have been, his character's reaction, he would have been apeshit crazy. He probably would have picked up Richard Pryor and fucking throw him around. And just that reaction would have been so much fun to watch. And instead, it ends abruptly where Richard Pryor and the woman's leaving, and then it cuts to credits, the end credits. And I'm like, that seems like an abrupt way. Was something filmed and was cut out? I mean, just the ending bugged me the way it was done. I'm like, it seems kind of abrupt, and would love to have seen John Candy's reaction. And it's just that John Candy got left out of stuff because of the stipulation. It's kind of, some of those stipulations kind of hurt the fun of the movie, took a little bit of the fun out, because it can't go too crazy. Just a little bit. But it seems like we're complaining a lot about the film. I'm just getting a little bit of the gripes or nitpicks out of it. But I mean, John Candy's the catcher who bugs the shit out of people. Oh, the bat has the brains, huh? And trying to fuck with people trying to swing. Him and Richard Pryor get in a bar fight. They get bailed out. They think this guy's a scout, but he works for this group that tells them about this whole deal. The spend 30 million, 30 days, get 300 million. And he's just, Richard Pryor starts hiring security. He hires all these taxis. At one point, John Candy's in one taxi. He's in another. John Candy's on TV, and he's like, "Can I say something to people who thought I was a loser?" John Candy's fun. I wish he was given a bit more to do. I didn't like as much screen time as Richard Pryor, Gene Wilder had in See No Evil, Hear No Evil. Like, if it would have been them as partners, that would have been, I think, even better. But yeah, Richard Pryor rents this hotel. Stephen Collins, which I do love the line, especially now when Stephen Collins leaves and Richard Pryor goes, "Now that was a real asshole." I'm like, "You're right, Richard." Not only that, he's a pedophile asshole. So I like that line. Rick Moranis pops up and he disappears. I'm like, "Where's Rick Moranis?" He's the king of the mimics, and he starts mimicking Richard Pryor and John Candy. He's in it for like 1 or 2 scenes, then he disappears, and I'm like, why isn't that guy around more? It's Rick Moranis. But I like that Richard Pryor tells John Candy, "Can you do something? Choke this guy?" And then John Candy goes, "My pleasure. Come on, asshole," and starts choking Rick Moranis out. That was a bit of fun. Richard Pryor helps his minor league team, buys them uniforms, gets them to the game where they're going to have an exhibition game with the Yankees, and he's going to pay for it. The clever thing where he gets an upside-down stamp that's rare, but he mails it out, so it's not an asset. Pays for champagne. Him and the accountant are driving. They accidentally hit someone, or someone hits him. And he's like, "Here's a way to lose some money. You have brain damage, you don't even know it. Here, I'll settle it out. I'll give you this." And then just, you feel bad for Richard Pryor's character because he can't tell anybody. So, like, John Candy is being a good friend trying to help. One's him back $10 million, so he's back to square one. And all Richard Pryor's like, "Oh my God, I'm back to square one." No, but he can't tell anybody. So I guess that's the conflict. But it's just, I think the film could have been funnier if it didn't have all of these, as much of a conflict. You know what I mean? Like, I know it's supposed to be that now everyone thinks this guy's crazy, but that's not really milked as much for laughs or entertainment value. It's just one of those things that is something in the movie. But, I mean, considering the election we've had recently, with 2 candidates that a lot of people would say no one liked, and to vote for none of the above, and then I'm watching this, and he gets an idea to lose that money to go into an election and spend a shitload of money with advertising, and he's like, "Don't vote for either of these two. Vote for nobody. None of the above." And I'm like, I wish there was a Richard Pryor for this election. Some guy would come out and go, "They both suck. Vote for nobody. None of the above. When you write in none of the above." So again, it was kind of weird watching this, and I'm like, man, I wish there was a Brewster in today's age that did that. Don't vote for any of us. We're all assholes. So that was funny for Richard. And Richard Pryor, I like. Yeah, these two guys are missed. I do think, concerning, these two guys, it could have been a funnier movie, but I still found it entertaining. I still liked the film. One really funny bit is when they're playing the baseball game, and John Candy's talking to one of the Yankees and fucking with him. And he's like, "Yeah, I saw you on TV. I saw your wife on TV too." "Yeah? Yeah, she sure is an ugly bitch." And the guy misses. And he's like, gets pissed. "Who you calling my wife ugly bitch?" Trying to start a fight. I thought John Candy, that was pretty good. And at the end, when he's pretty much spent anything, and John Candy's still a good friend, he's like, you know, I saved all the money you gave me. We don't buy a Corvette. We don't go cross country. And Richard Pryor's like, you don't know. I mean, tomorrow, I can't tell my best friend. And he hugs John Candy. And that's why I wish there was a scene afterward where he's able to tell John Candy, I did win. See, this is what it was about. And see John Candy's reaction. It would have been fucking cool. But it's like something left dangling that's not finished. He goes with the accountant, and Stephen Collins is a dickhead, like in real life, and he saves some money to fuck with them so that the firm will get the money. But then the accountant and Richard Pryor are able to put a fast one on them and get at the nick of time. Oh, Pat Hingle, who was in Commissioner Gordon and Batman Returns and so forth. And he was in Going Berserk with John Candy. He was in Maximum Overdrive. He has a role in this as one of the good guys in the firm. And he didn't know anything about it. Richard Pryor wins, and then the ending is pretty abrupt. Kind of an abrupt ending. So yeah, I mean, I have my issues with the film. I have little issues with the movie. But I still found it to be an entertaining film. I still like the movie. I like the premise of the film for the most part. I do like Richard Pryor. I think he does a good job. I think John Candy does do a good job with what he has to do. I'm kind of looking up any information for the film. Yeah, Walt Hill says later he made the film to improve his bank account and success quotient. He later called the film an aberration in the career line, being his only flat-out comedy. He added that whatever the film's deficiencies, I think the wistful quality was there. I was happy about that. The picture did well and made money. So that was Walter Hill. Yeah, it came out in 1985, May 22nd, 1985, so it came out in the summer. Forgot that Ry Cooder did the music for this. Yeah, the score. Score's alright. Score fits the film fine. Yeah, Peter Jason, who's worked with John Carpenter quite a few times, he has a supporting a bit role as a reporter. Jerry Orbach, who was in Alfred Justice, who was in actually would work with John Candy later in Delirious, and he was in Universal Soldier. He has a bit role as the manager of the minor league baseball team. This is a fun one. I wouldn't call it a classic, but it's a fun movie. Helped by its premise and its 2 stars. I just, again, I think the comedy could have been churned out more given the situation if they didn't have so many stipulations with how. Because again, you could easily spend $30 million like the way I explained it, but have more fun with that. Don't be a little bit less dire with it, and have a bit more screen time with these two together, and have a bit more satisfying of an ending, or a little bit longer with letting Richard Pryor tell John Candy what happened and what the whole deal was. So I think with that it would have been an even better film, but it's still a good movie. I still like the film Brewster's Millions. So thanks for watching. Take care, and we'll see you in the next video. Later.